Oh, somehow this went live. I didn't hit
Yay!
anything.
Oh, hey,
Must be
what's
live
up? We did it.
because
Well, that's exciting.
that's fun.
We did it.
I didn't enter the
Also,
key or
hello.
anything. Hi, everyone.
Welcome. Let's stop talking about our addresses. Hi, this is the SciComm happy hour. Everybody have a happy hour?
Apollo
Thing?
12 based happy hour.
Oh,
I
I have
love
that
it.
same. I
Nice.
have that same cup.
Nice.
I only have bottles of Victoria because that's all we could buy because I just moved to LA.
Oh, yeah.
So.
I'm drinking a cocktail that is a quarantini variant. It's called an obituary.
Oh,
Apropos.
Dark.
I like it.
Yeah.
A little morbid.
Very
humor.
dark.
Well, you know, we start there, and then it's only up from there.
Amy, what do you have to drink?
I have white wine, but the more exciting thing is the Apollo 12 glass, let's be honest.
It's
Yes.
true. It's true.
Yeah. Vintage, all the glassware and plates in my house are vintage. This is the only Apollo stuff I have though, so it's fun.
Bobak, what are you drinking, sir?
I am drinking a bourbon. This one actually is from Mary Robinette, and the glass is one from Shira Teitel. You can see the Ranger spacecraft that I want to talk about later at the bottom of my glass.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. I'm bringing it full circle today, guys.
Today I learned I have to send Bobak drink accompaniment.
If you do,
and it'll be live on the stream somewhere. I'm drinking a Manhattan in honor of our friends on the East Coast who are getting their testing together. Go Manhattan.
Yay.
Yay.
This is like I have been hesitant to drink much because drinking tends to amplify my mood. And I was like, oh, I don't want to cry myself to sleep every night this week.
Some nights, just some nights.
Just a few, just a couple.
So I want to ask, how are you rationing your supply of alcohol given the times?
Well,
good at that.
we personally, we have a kind of ridiculous collection, an embarrassing collection of alcohol.
I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, my mom's family is Southern Baptist, so they would disagree with you there. But yeah, so we're not rationing so much as seeing this as an opportunity to empty some shelf space. Some house cleaning is really the way to think of it.
Yeah, I got 2 cases of wine for a book event a few weeks ago. So I have a ton of wine. So I'm just kind of going through that because I'm getting low on I need to do like a run of like hard liquor, as we were saying earlier before we accidentally went live. I'm almost out of gin. So I need to do like the gin and whiskey run. So I'm kind of rationing that for now and sticking with the wine.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of whiskey. So, push comes to shove, and some rums. A lot of rums over there too. So
it's almost like you over prepared for this moment.
Well, yeah.
All right. So let's talk about what we're doing. This is like, we have happy hours a few times a week between people that are science communicators because really this is a time for us to be talking to each other. I hope the live audience has as much fun as we're going to have tonight. It's really just a moment when we're all sort of stuck in our respective houses to keep up the community, share a little bit of science, share how we're kind of dealing with the day-to-day that's going on right now, and hopefully give you a little bit of optimism going forward. So this is meant to be fun and ridiculous. If you have questions for us, drop them in the chat. We'll do our best to sort of weave it into the conversation. My name's Kishore. I should have probably started with that, I don't know, about 5 minutes ago. I mean, whatever, here's where we are. Why don't we do a whip around of introductions, and then I have some questions to kind of get us going. Bobak, do you want to start?
Yes, I have a cat who is attacking at this very moment the cardboard. Hi, I'm Bobak Ferdowsi. I work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory on robotic spacecraft, and particularly in how they fail. And I just love science and space in general, and science fiction, as you can tell from the backdrop here.
Robinette, your turn.
I'm Mary Robinette Kowal. I am a science fiction writer, an audiobook narrator, and a professional puppeteer. And my science fiction books are specifically related to what Amy does, which is I write about vintage space.
That's like the best transition to somebody else's introduction you're ever going to get, Amy.
Appreciate it. I know, right? Hello, I'm Amy Shira Teitel. I am a spaceflight historian, and I do YouTube channel. My world right now. I'm gonna like blatantly do this right now. My book Fighting for Space just came out a few weeks ago, so I'm still currently in like intense book headspace and trying to figure out how do you get people to buy books in an era where no one can go outside. Also available in audiobook format as narrated by me. But yeah, I do all the space history, but right now a lot of aviation history because this book is largely about women pilots.
Welcome to Amy's virtual book launch,
Yeah.
everyone.
You mean this book?
Fantastic. Love it.
It's on my bookshelf right here.
I was just thinking. I used Breaking the Chains of Gravity,
Which is like the coolest thing ever.
so heavily. It's the when people want to ask about the era, it's the book I recommend the most.
It was
Trace, I think you're up to
about
introduce.
eat
Oh,
chocolate.
right,
I
and we're
mean,
up to Trace.
you're
Chocolate
on my
eating Trace.
channel right now, so hopefully you know who I am. But if you don't, I am Trace. I make YouTube videos about science, education, and whatever else I'm kind of feeling that week. And I used to do a channel called DNews/Seeker, podcast called Science Plus, and I host a television show called PBS Stargazers out of PBS South Florida. I do a lot of stuff. Basically, if it's science-y, I'm probably connected to it at some point over the last decade.
So I have my first question is, every call that I'm on starts with, how are you doing? And it immediately depresses me. Like when we start talking about how are you doing? So I need to crowdsource a better question to start all of these video conference calls with that essentially gets at that same thing, but not the how are you doing? So I want to try some things.
Cool.
All right, let's
Be a
let's
test
try
bed.
a few things, right? Okay. What was the last thing you ate and why did it make you happy?
A handful of Cheez-Its, because who doesn't love Cheez-Its?
I just ate some chocolate. Great.
I had some squid peanuts. I don't want to go to.
Wait,
they make
what?
these-
Those
gotta
aren't
make sure
aren't words that go
emphasize
together.
Every part of that word.
I'm waiting. I'm like, are you
Really,
sure? That
you know what? Here's the thing. I probably should just bring a bag over, but they are like cracker encrusted peanuts, but the crackers are squid flavored. Like if you can imagine,
Yep.
you know, like you had like those like wasabi peas, right? They got like little breading around it. It's just peanuts with squid bread, crackery thing. Anyway, that's just. Listen, I went to the Japanese market, and after the masses had gone, and I was like, "What's left for snacks?" And I was like, "This is it, squid peanuts." So I've got a lot of them in my pantry.
I
I'll
can't
send
tell
some
if
to
you
you
like
guys.
them or not. That's the
I do. I like them. I like them. I was just embarrassed a little bit. Like I was a little like, what are people gonna say about squid peanuts?
it's like I like squid ink pasta, like squid ink. I expect those two words to go together. Like there are a lot of things that I expect to follow the word squid, but peanuts was not one of them.
No,
Mhm.
So
You're
I
not
had right before coming on, because I was like, oh, I'm having a cocktail, maybe I should have some food. I had some manchego cheese and some lovely olives that had been vacuum packed, so they are perfect still. Yeah, so olives and cheese.
You're classing up this place.
Yeah, you really are.
I know.
Martinis and olives instead of
Right, like a wine bar over there.
unknown wine and Cheez-Its.
But, so for full disclosure, my husband is a winemaker. Like that is his job. So which is part of why we have a ridiculous amount of alcohol in our home.
I had a quarter of a cereal bar that my 9-year-old left on the floor, and you know what? Not bad. It wasn't bad.
I love a good floor snack.
Hey,
Yeah, Bobak, you do
Nothing
not need
goes
be
to waste.
embarrassed about
Yeah.
the squid peanuts anymore.
nope. Number 2 on the list now.
Is there anything that has been awesome this week? Like something that gave you a little bit of brightness, some hope this week, something like stuck out to you? Because there's been so much good news that gets like buried under the weight of everything that's happening. I'm curious if people have like run into stuff that has just been awesome. Trace is going to explode with good news right now.
Animal Crossing.
Animal
Oh
Crossing.
God.
Can you explain why Animal Crossing is a thing that I should care about?
Do you like playing games that are pointless?
But it's like virtual yard work.
Yes.
I don't get it.
No, I think the Onion. Said it best. Animal Crossing's creator. Let me just Google really quick. The Onion Animal Crossing. So Animal Crossing is like The Sims, but it's better because you don't actually have to do anything and your people can't die.
Great.
You can just like literally catch fish and catch bugs and like build your house, and it's great. So here's their headline. Animal Crossing New Horizons developers confirm that no one can hurt you here. No one can make you scared.
Aw, yeah.
Oh.
Thanks, The Onion. You nailed it. That's why I like it. I can just like, I literally spent an hour today catching fish and like running around, picking weeds.
You're not selling me on this game. Like,
It was wonderful.
Weeds and fishing is not high on my list
can
of
chop down
things.
trees.
Once
It
this
just
lockdown
makes me
lifts.
think of in The Simpsons when they're doing the virtual or the yard work simulator at the fair, and then they're doing the yard work simulator. Like that's what I think of when I think of Animal Crossing.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is.
Literally, we're in unprecedented times, and somehow The Simpsons did an episode on what we're going through. I don't know how that's possible, but here we are.
Simpsons magic.
Other
If you
good
like
stories.
Stardew Valley, you'll like Animal Crossing. I'll just put it that way.
If you like
people
what?
Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley is the other game.
I don't know. My sister-in-law is really into it.
All right, other stories of awesome.
So in the chat. So neurotransmissions. Shout out Allie.
Yay.
Oh, Ellie Caldwell's here. Hey.
So one of the things that I just read about that I thought was really beautiful was, you've probably read about the music that they're playing in Italy, like leaning out the windows and playing music together, and that now they're trying to coordinate that, which is, I think, lovely. But the thing that makes me most happy is that they're doing a coordinated applause for the medical workers. So the church bells toll at 6 p.m. and then everyone leans out the window and claps in unison for the medical workers so that they know that they're supported and appreciated, which is just so beautifully heartwarming. I read it and was like, oh, this is beautiful. And then I touched my face. It was all over.
Oh no.
We should have like a face touching counter on this show.
Oh gosh.
I'm gonna do it live for Bobak. I'm just gonna keep the number down because I have a feeling like he's gonna be the most rigorous about not touching his face. But I'm gonna keep a counter. I'm gonna get a whiteboard here in a second. I'll have the counter up live behind me.
I feel pretty good about not touching my face, honestly. Like I've gotten into a routine of not touching it. So
I work from
we'll see.
home, so I've been working from home for months and over a year. So I'm not very good at it. No one tells me otherwise.
Okay, maybe Trace needs Animal Crossing based on that.
This is not in the happy news thing, but it was a thing that I hadn't thought about. I was talking to a friend virtually today, and she said that she was thinking about the fact that she had elbow bumped someone on Thursday before the lockdown. Excuse me, the not shelter in place. My husband is calling it ensconced in situ. Order happened. So before she was told to
No. We have to give that much more applause. It's constant situ.
That's
we
really
are letting that
funny.
go away.
That's really
great.
funny.
Yeah. I love
Can
it.
you have your husband like walk in behind you so we can give him like coordinated applause?
I would,
It's,
but being a winemaker, he is also what they called in the Regency a decorative hermit. So
Tell me about the great phrases today.
I'm a writer. Anyway, but what she said, I'm just going to touch my face. What she said was that she was thinking about this elbow bump, and that that is the last human contact that she had, and she doesn't know when she will actually touch another person again, another living being, because she lives by herself and she doesn't have pets. And I was like, that was the first thing that really made me have a moment of understanding what some people are going to be living with. Not just like, there are ways to get around the conversational aspect of it, but we are built to be, most people, everybody is wired differently, but most people are built to have a certain amount of contact and tactile connection. And like, I live with a charming husband and 2 cats who do not observe the no touching the face rule. And it's a very different experience.
I had this weird experience where my son, who's 9, he came and gave me a hug, and I like initially like recoiled for just like the split second, and how just like I was like, my son's just giving me a hug, he lives with me, all that kind of stuff, but it's like I'm so on guard right now around all of those things, and it made me sad to think about that. And so like there's a way that I feel like we need to like acknowledge what you're talking about, because like all the messages that get to me are like, don't touch your face, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. And I understand why all those things exist, but there hasn't been as much space for people to like, I don't know what the right word is, but just like get okay with that.
Yeah.
It's true.
Can I share one bit of awesome news? I live in the western half of San Francisco in a neighborhood called the Sunset, and this Facebook group emerged, and they basically gridded the entire Sunset neighborhood and said, okay, there's a lot of elderly people that live out here. We're going to print flyers and put them in every single house, and we're looking for volunteers to pick up flyers and go to every single house in your grid. And in like 3 days, they basically covered the western half of San Francisco with these flyers. They're basically a hotline where anyone can call and have somebody go buy groceries for you, get medication, run errands, like anything, like somebody that is, disabled, stuck at home, can't go out for whatever reason, even healthcare workers that are just sort of, stretched to the nines. And one of the things they do to show that you're part of this group is you're supposed to put out a unity light. It's like lighting a candle in your window, where everyone puts a light in the window. And I've been trying to sort of get outside on walks when less people are outside. And so I went out on a walk at night the other night, and I was walking up my street and I saw, light, 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 light. And there was something about that, like amidst like being on all these like Zoom calls and video conference, where I feel like so entirely disconnected, that like reconnected me to like just how awesome the American people are, and how desperate people are just to do something to help right now. And I that's something like I'm going to remember for like the rest of my life, is seeing like walking up the street on just a quiet, no noise on the street, no cars, nothing, but seeing all those lights along the way. It was awesome.
That's really heartwarming.
It's beautiful.
I love stories like that.
And I always touch my face, so
Yeah.
I ruined it.
You ruined it.
Did you
I
mark it
ruined it.
down?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to start marking things down here.
I do think that this is something that a bunch of friends and I have had, you text message groups and, WhatsApp groups, whatever it is that you use to keep in touch with your friends. And one of them that I've had is, we're talking a little bit about how this is going to change us, like just as people. And like, I also had an experience where I think I mentioned this last time we streamed, that I was working and I had to shake someone's hand for like to be on camera. We were doing a thing and I had to shake their hand on camera. And it was weird because it was the first like person that I had touched in a week, even though I'd been surrounded by people because I was working in this shoot with like a crew and like everything, but I never touched anyone. I met all these new people, and normally you would like shake their hand, and when something would go well, you'd high five. None of that, like no touching. So then I shook this person's hand and it was like really weird. But I did immediately feel closer to them. Like after that, like when they left, I had hung out with them for this like 3 or 4 days of this shoot, and they left and I wanted to hug them, but I couldn't. But I felt like, oh, well, at least we like touched hands that one time. Like that was nice. But I do think that I think this experience is going to change people.
Yeah. So one of the things that, besides the space stuff that I write, I also write a bunch of stuff in the Regency, and I would go on.
What's the Regency?
Oh, sorry, the Regency era, the late 1700s, early 1800s, Napoleonic, Jane Austen. Those are the big touchstones that people recognize. But for totally for research, and definitely not because I absolutely loved it at all, I went on a couple of different Regency retreats where you're dressed in costume the entire time, which includes gloves. And there were occasions where the gloves would come off and you would have skin to skin contact, and it really did feel like being naked. And it was amazing how quickly you adjust to this other set of social parameters and norms that without even thinking about it consciously. So I'm certain that when we come out of this, that one of the things that will happen to us is that our social boundaries will have reset. The parameters about, like when we finally are allowed to have parties again, the distances that we keep between each other, it's going to be hard to calibrate that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I always feel weird that it's already calibrated in like English imperial units and not in the metric system. I find that very disturbing.
That was a dig at Bobak, wasn't it?
That really was.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
I
it
find.
was.
You saw the tweets.
Oh, did you actually tweet about this?
We tweeted about how I messed up the time, and then Mary Robinette commented that it was in metric, and so
So he's going to be
Yeah.
talking about the Mars Climate Orbiter today. That's what he does.
yeah.
Get measurements wrong.
Amy, Bobak, any like good news that you want to share, or something that gave you a little bit of hope?
Honestly, so I know that a lot of people are struggling with the teleconferencing things, but we had an amazing set of teleconferences with our partners at ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, this week, all done remotely. With a little bit of video here and there, but mostly audio and WebEx kind of stuff, and it was really positive. It wasn't the same as going there in person, but I was really pleased to see that everybody sort of was pulling together. And it was great to hear, just all those voices again, kind of like chatting with people was a lot more. I think there was a lot more connecting actually on a personal level because we're all going through a shared experience. And sometimes when you go and you're just like there for a business thing, everybody was like very concerned, right? Like asking how are things there? Like what's your facility like? And so I think that kind of brought us a little bit closer together in some ways than the usual kind of meetings.
Can I ask, like, they had that devastating orbiter crash last year.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like how they feel as a space agency now?
So of course we're in WhatsApp groups, so we always chat about this. Like I was very curious because I was watching that and like my heart was just falling, right? Watching this like no telemetry. And it's like your biggest fear, I think, for people who work in like this thing is it's a complete lack of information, which is like, you're like, well, I don't know how to feel right now. So I was chatting with them and they're surprisingly I think they're really optimistic because they see each of these as sort of an experiment and a learning opportunity. And they know they have many more opportunities coming up, right? Like the Prime Minister, even however you feel sort of about his politics, at least is extremely supportive of the space program. And so they don't have to worry that like a failure equals the condemnation of the whole program or anything, right? In fact, they're just like, okay, we're going to learn, we're going to move forward. And the kind of cool thing is the way they operate is it really is a lot of the same people who keep doing project to project. So when they make a mistake, they are taking that into their sort of personal experience and learning from it. So everybody I talked to was like, yeah, it's unfortunate, but well, we're going to do it again. And I was like, oh, that's great. Like I would love to have that sort of confidence that they have.
God, I wish I had an Indian person in my life to like help me have that like mentality.
Yeah.
Amy, how about you? Like, how is this been, especially with like putting out a book when you're gonna be like basically like talking all these stories with people in person everywhere?
Yeah. Well, the weird thing is that I've been working from home for 10 years. So like nothing's different. All of the interviews that I've had this week anyways, they were all radio, so none of them were canceled. It's been like kind of the same, but just like no one's answering emails because everyone's really distracted right now. It's been really weird. It's been like kind of the worst time to release a book a little bit because I've had some events planned and signings and stuff. I'm trying to figure out like how do I stay at all on people's minds and how do I kind of keep people interested and engage with people when I can't be there to do it. While also doing things like maintaining the YouTube channel and stuff. And when I think about this week, as you're going through like news that made you happy, like the only news that I can think of that happened this week is that we lost Al Warden, who I knew fairly well, and that one was actually
talk about Al, because I realize his
yeah.
passing is like is a horrible thing,
Yeah.
but Al is a great guy.
Yeah, has everyone in here met him?
I never got to meet him, but
you got to meet him. Yeah.
I'm familiar, but not.
Yeah.
No.
I've known Al for I knew him for 4 or 5 years, enough that like I was astounded actually. I put this video in my blog post, but a friend of mine was hosting an event in Zurich, Starmus, friend Brian Mallow, and there was a bunch of Apollo astronaut series like who might know you by name, and I'm like, I think Al should. But he meets a lot of people. I don't know. And then he sent me this video being like, Amy, I heard what you said about me. Obviously, I know you. And I was like, aw. I met him through my friend Frances French, who I'll plug their book because it's sitting here. But they wrote Falling to Earth, which is Al's memoir, and Frances co-wrote it. It's a great book. And because I'm close with Frances, I got to meet Al. And the first time I met him, speaking of, social distances being reset, first time I met him, he's like, you're the Amy, and he just hugged me, and he was just like so grandfatherly and sweet, but like didn't want to dwell on like back in the good old days. Like he was one of those guys that just never slowed down. He was in the hospital for a couple weeks, and I just like his energy was so infectious, and he felt like that person that was never going to stop, that I was like, this is a setback. He'll be okay. He'll be slower, but he'll be okay. I 100% expected him to pull out of it. So, he was 88. It's one of those things you can't expect them to last forever because they are older. But it's, some of these guys, they don't stop. They're mentally as with it. You talk to them, they look 80, but they feel 30. I mean, it's amazing, some of these guys. And it just is the person that I probably knew the most of that whole kind of era. Is that one was bad. I know a lot of people, he touched a lot of lives, but at least he touched a lot of lives such as his legacy will live on. So
Bobak, do you have an Al Warden story? I know met him.
Yeah, I met him. We were South by Southwest last year, and I got to be on a panel, sort of moderate a panel with him. And it was also Jerry Griffin, who is a flight director for Apollo. So the two of them had like an amazing, I just really didn't even want to talk. I just wanted to watch the two of them chat the whole time. But I told this story on Twitter, but I think he's a very comical and very funny guy. And he was talking about some of the experiments that they were doing in orbit, and they had this mass spectrometer that they put out on a long arm to keep it away from the body of the spacecraft. And they were like, they didn't expect to see anything in lunar orbit, basically. And so they're flying through these orbits, and they're like, this is weird. We're finding all sorts of just kind of interesting chemistry in orbit. And it turns out when they look at the trajectory of their orbit, they're kind of repeating their orbit track, and they're flying through the cloud of urine that they've dumped overboard. And they're detecting all this urine repeatedly with their mass spectrometer. So these, you can only imagine scientists who have spent so much time building these like portable space-worthy instruments to sit on Apollo. And you're like, yep, we can certainly detect human urine.
It's really weird that we're getting this asparagus peak, like here in the.
I am totally putting that in the next novel.
There were so many pea spotting jokes on Apollo. It was weird.
Well, now you have to tell one.
You're all well. I just remember there's this great spot because I feel really bad. I don't know Apollo 15 inside now. I know Apollo 12 quite well. But there was a moment on 12 when Pete Conrad is just going, hey Al, hey look Al, look out the window, and it turns out that he was trying to get him to look at his pee. The urine tub. It's like, you guys are 8. You're going to the moon, but you're 8. Yeah. There's a lot of like, look at my pee. It's funny.
Yeah, I've been told that you do not eat a milk dud on the ISS.
Yep. Yeah, don't do that.
Sure,
Almost got like a legitimate spit take there.
I
I only held it together because this is good bourbon that I have in this Manhattan, and I was just like, no, I'm not putting it to waste. But I was like,
I want to move
All right.
on to a question we got from the chat before we go into. Everybody has brought, just for the audience watching, everybody's brought a topic to talk about, and we're going to spend the next kind of half hour going through all those. But I thought maybe we would do a question from the chat, which I really like. And I think just briefly, if everybody could give one tip. Nathan Smith in the chat says, not too many people have been quarantining where he lives, but soon they will be. Do we have any advice for someone who has to spend their time at home, who's about to go into quarantine? So for me, I would say one big tip is to make sure that you have someone you can talk to, whether it's a cat, doesn't have to be a human, but a cat, or you can text people, you can video chat people, you can go online. That's the wonderful thing about social media, but have someone you can talk to throughout the day so you don't feel crazy.
Can I tag on to that before I give my tip? I think a lot of shelters are actually offering cats for adoption for this time because they can't take care of all of them, and like you can keep cats and dogs and stuff. So even if it's just a temporary, then you might just fall in love with them, of course, like you probably will. But that is an option for companionship right now that normally isn't. It's like not a full-time commitment. It's just sort of during this
You're actually
period.
helping.
So,
I love
right,
that.
you're helping out and you're getting a friend, which will help you a lot.
And this is the time to get a puppy because you can do all of the training because you'll be home.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Okay, who has a tip next? Kishore, you want to go next?
I have 2. My relationship with my parents has never been stronger because I talk to them every day because they're like teenagers and they're like, yeah, we're gonna go to the house, we're gonna go out to stores and stuff. And it's just like, okay, so like the situation's completely flipped, and they're the teenagers sneaking out at night, and I'm the parent now. So I talk to them a lot, but I stopped approaching it a few days ago as like I'm there talking to them, like scolding them to stay home, and I was like, when am I ever going to have this time where I like talk to my parents every day and we're there with each other? So I'm viewing it as a gift of time with my parents. And the other tip I have is everyone, the toilet paper hoarding, that's like a worldwide thing. I get a bidet and I'm never going back. So get a bidet.
So
I will second that.
Real. Noted. Okay. Mine is for people who enjoy cooking and can afford it. And I recognize that is neither category is everybody. Meal kits, because they deliver fresh produce to your home once a week with all of the ingredients you need. So we aren't having to go to the grocery store. We aren't having to hoard food or anything like that. We're having a variety of things. It's not just rice and beans constantly. So meal kits are, we already had it, and it is an unexpected benefit. We really can actually just stay in the apartment.
I'll second that.
I've been doing imperfect produce for a while, and it's great.
Yeah.
Oh, totally Buzz Market imperfect produce, Amy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to like name
No, Buzz Market them. Please, it's awesome.
I think it's Imperfect Foods now, but it's all produce that's overstock or too ugly to be sold in grocery stores, but it's all perfectly fine to eat. It's cheap. It's relatively cheap, and they've expanded into foods now. So this past week I got salmon and veggie burgers and olive oil because I was running low. But like I've got coffee coming. Like you can mostly do your grocery shopping through Imperfect Produce. You won't get everything, but you can get staples. You can get a lot of stuff. And I love that I'm offsetting food waste. And also right now they're still delivering. They're kind of committing to helping people not leave the house. So it's nice. It's a great service.
I love that.
And
I've always wanted to do that. I should join now that
I've been doing it for like over a year.
And those ugly salmon, they need a home. So
No, it's
they're
I don't-
delicious.
it's all still delicious.
It's like the food version of belly flops. You know, the jelly beans, the jelly bellies, that they make them the wrong color.
No,
wrong
I thought you
shape.
meant like the food version of flopping into a pool. And I was
No,
like,
it's
what
a
are you
product that
talking
the
about?
jelly belly people make. When they
I did not
when
know
they mess
that.
up their jelly beans, they're a lot cheaper.
All right, we're so far off track. We gotta like come back to some stories now. Ready for some science part?
Let's do it.
All right, because this is Amy's virtual book
Yeah.
launch. Like we're gonna start with let's talk some famous female aviators.
Famous female aviators. So yeah, I know we're talking about like, what's your cool science news? And I'm like, I'm still working on a woman who died in 1980. That's Jackie Cochran right here. She's still who I'm thinking about constantly because I'm doing a lot of like stuff that didn't make it into the book for YouTube stuff and for blog stuff. So I guess I'll just tell you guys a little bit about Jackie and why she's like the most epic badass that you've never heard of and why I'm obsessed with her. Actually, my like big exciting news of the week, I guess, is that I won an eBay auction for a telegram about her from 1937. Like I have so much stuff and none of it's on my desk, which is annoying. But I've been collecting like ephemera of Jackie. I have this like huge stack of like vintage pictures. I have her makeup stuff. So anyways, Jackie Cochran is an amazing female pilot. She learned to fly in 1932 when she was 26 years old and got her license in 17 days because that's a totally normal amount of time in which to get a license. It is not. And this was 1932. By 1930, by the end of the decade, she'd won like all the major aviation awards, the Collier Trophy, the Harmon Trophy. She was the first solo woman to win the Bendix Transcontinental Air Race. She was one of the first 2 women to enter the Bendix in 1935. She and her dear friend, Amelia Earhart, were the first 2 women to enter in 1935. Amelia, one of my most prized possessions right now, actually. Amelia inscribed a copy of her memoir, The Fun of It, to Jackie in 1936 in memory of an electric jaunt across the continent, which was the first time they flew together. And I own that book now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
cool.
amazing that it's like signed by Amelia and has Jackie's book plate in it, and it's sitting in my shelf, and it's just like it's very protected in a little presentation box. So Jackie went on to be to lead the Women's Air Force Service pilots in the Second World War, and in the process was making all kinds of insane friends, including Hap Arnold and Jimmy Doolittle. Post-war, she became the first woman to fly faster than sound with her good friend Chuck Yeager on her wing. They were the only, I think they were the only or the last time 2 people broke the sound barrier in tandem, actually. She also had an unsuccessful bid for Congress in 1956. She did everything. She kind of just did all the things because she wanted to do all the things. And she got her license in the first place because a man made a off-the-cuff comment to her at a dinner party once. She mentioned that she wanted to start her own cosmetics company. And he's like, well, you need to cover more ground than you can in a car because it's the Depression. So you should get your pilot's license. That man turned out to be Floyd Odlum, who was one of the 10 richest men in the country and then also became her husband. So between the 2 of them, they had access to all kinds of things. Also, she saved LBJ's life one day. That's the best.
Holy
What a
crap,
weird
holy.
postscript. Like, why
Right?
is that not the lead?
All right,
Yeah,
I know
way
that's
to
usually the
bury
lead.
that.
And she was also such good friends with Eisenhower that Eisenhower actually wrote one of his memoirs at her house. And all of her papers, because she kept everything, she's a pack rat and I love it. They're all in the Eisenhower Library in Abilene, Kansas. So when I was writing this book, I have like 5,000 pieces of paper of like letters and stuff that, you know, all the women in my book could speak for themselves because Jackie had everything. So with my book, I'll give you guys the lowdown. It's the quote, I'm getting so many air quotes, but like the quote unquote Mercury 13, because they were not associated with the Mercury program. They were not a unified group by any stretch. And there was also arguably not 13 of them because one withdrew her name from contention when she was going through a divorce. But it's usually told as like the Jerry Cobb story, where she's this woman taking on NASA to fight for gender equality. But that story never really worked for me because it ignores NASA's take of like, we're going to the moon and you are a single person trying to disrupt so many things, and this is more important because Cold War. and Jackie was always the villain of like, why did this woman come out of nowhere, tell them that women shouldn't fly in space, and then disappear to hang out with her pet raven like Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty? And it turns out that like it's Jackie's story, because every single person goes through Jackie, because Jackie was really good friends with Randy Lovelace, who was doing all the medical testing for NASA at the time, including testing the Mercury astronauts. And Randy Lovelace was bankrolling the clinic, and also the chairman of the board of the Lovelace Foundation. So he's making a lot of decisions there. So yeah, I'm the Jackie angle is like so much fun. There's so many things of Jackie that couldn't get in the book. Like I couldn't keep the extent of her cosmetics company in the book. She was the second largest luxury brand after Estee Lauder in the 50s. Like that's huge. And so much of that stuff exists. So they're on my shelf over there, but I have like 5 or 6 compacts of hers. I have hand cream, which I'm obviously not touching because it's 60 years old and disgusting. I have body lotion. I have some like weird oil stuff that I don't know what to do with. And it all smells, you know how when you're a kid and you find your grandma's perfume in the bathroom and it just has that old lady smell? Everything smells like that. So I've just been digging up all this like Jackie ephemera. Just because I'm so fascinated with her, because she invented herself as a pilot and as a beautician in the most literal way. She was not born Jackie Cochran. She created herself as she wanted to be when she moved to New York in 1929, and just did it. And she did it in the most complete way possible. And I love her.
Let me know if there's
Jackie rant.
let me see if there's a quick answer to this.
Yeah.
Is there a reason she's not a household name like Amelia Earhart and all these other contemporaries of her time?
I don't know. And it might be that she was a household name in the 50s, but her legacy never endured, because by the time she died, they were quite poor. They'd lost a lot of their wealth through a mix of bad business deals and Floyd's sons from a previous marriage squandering a lot of their money. So she died almost as poor as she started life. And that left her like, there's no Jackie Cochran Foundation. There's no like big thing of her. She didn't do anything to immortalize herself. Her headstone is about this big in Indio, about 2 hours from my house. It's weird because like how many times does Amelia Earhart's name pop up? And I'm like, not only were the two of them really good friends, but like this is a woman who outflew Amelia, with the exception of never circumnavigating the world, which Amelia didn't finish either, but like they were not even in competition. They were doing different kinds of records. I don't know why the world has just completely forgotten Jackie, because yeah, it's weird. I think do you have insight? Because I know that like flyers know who she is, but the average person, there's no like mystique around her.
Yeah, and that is I think why, like for narrative purposes, because Amelia Earhart disappeared, it leaves her open for a lot of narrative possibilities. And she also disappeared at the height of her kind of popular appearance. But even in the day, she was not the best pilot. Some of her records, she was not actually the pilot in command of the plane.
Oh yeah, when she got famous for being the first woman to fly across the Atlantic, she was a passenger. By her own admission, she was a sack of potatoes.
Yep. She was just, that's it. But she was the first woman across the Atlantic. She just didn't fly the plane. She wasn't piloting.
Yeah.
But people,
well, that story is less cool all of a sudden.
People gravitate. They gravitate towards firsts, and they gravitate towards tragedy. And Amelia Earhart has both of those.
And a husband who spun her story into gold at the time and made her. I mean, he made her who she was in her era, and made sure that her memoir lived, because every time it was his publishing company, George Putnam Publishing is still a thing. He sold books about her. He made money. Yeah. Jackie hated her husband. She has some words about George.
All right, Mary Robinette, you teased at the top the word puppetry.
Puppets.
Yes.
Oh, and we got to talk about puppets.
Okay. So there's a couple of different ways we can talk about puppets. One is that I actually I brought an activity that we can all do. So I'm gonna tell people who are watching this to grab a shawl or a dinner napkin or a towel, basically a piece of cloth. You're gonna grab a piece of cloth, and I don't
have as many shawls as you might think.
I
at
don't
my
see
ready.
Gotta throw blanket, guys.
Throw
It's
blanket.
gonna happen.
Hang on,
Great.
I'll grab one.
Perfect.
dinner napkin, what
Yes.
have you.
This
So
is so
grab
exciting.
those things, and then hi.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, it's a little weird because my valet is still on the screen, but and my eyes are apparently on crooked today. That's a little awkward there. Yeah. All right. So this is a form of puppetry. You've all just Bobak has just gone stupid staring at the camera. That happens sometimes.
Sorry.
Okay. So my name is Lee, and I'm moving mouth puppet, which is what most of you are probably used to. So I'm gonna faint here. Ugh. So what we're gonna do is there are 4 principles of puppetry that make every figure come alive. My job as a puppeteer is to take the body language that we do naturally, break it apart into its semantic components, and then reconstruct it so that it's human readable in an inanimate object. So if you've got a shawl, what you're going to do is you're going to tie a knot in it, okay? And we're going to make what I call scarf dragon. So you just tie a knot in the very end of the shawl, okay? And then you wind up with scarf dragon.
This is awesome. Can I say how weird it is? When I was in Halifax a few weeks ago giving a talk, and I stayed with an old prof of mine who's married to a professor of puppetry.
Oh, cool.
Never thought that I would hang out with 2 puppeteers in the span of a few weeks ever. This is awesome.
I hang out with a lot of them. It's the weirdest thing. Okay, so we've got scarf dragon, and for those of you who've got a napkin, you're going to just tie a knot in a corner. Okay, and that's going to be your little nosy thing. Okay,
Mine looks more like a bunny.
that's fine too. Bunny is good. Bunny is good. So focus. There are 4 principles: focus, breath, muscle, and meaningful movement. And the thing that's interesting about this is that once you know what these are, you can also then manipulate your own image on the screen to make your video conversations more alive and connected. So focus indicates thought. It's pretty easy, right? Okay. Focus indicates thought. What your puppet is looking at is what they're thinking about. Breath indicates emotion. Sad puppet is sad. Oh. Now, the interesting thing about breath is that breath and rhythm are closely related. The speed that you breathe carries information. So if I have a character that walks in like this, you know that they were probably running before they got there, right? You know that really specific inhalation of breath that your mom does right before she yells at you?
Yes.
Okay, so that carries content. So breath carries emotion, and focus carries thought. The interesting thing is when you combine those 2 things, you can tell me what your character is thinking about and how they feel about it just by changing speed. So in this scenario, Scarf Dragon is going to turn and look at me and then pull back. So I'm going to give a little more space and you get to see my ring light. La la. Turn and look at me and then pull back. That's the only motion I'm allowed, but I'm allowed to change the speed. Okay.
It's like, what did you just say there?
Exactly.
That's funny.
Versus. Very different things, right?
Yeah.
So all I'm doing there is changing the speed. Muscle is the idea that your character is able to move by themselves. So with Scarf Dragon, I can actually, I'm going to do this with the napkin because I've got more space. With my little napkin guy here, I can lift or we can jump. Oh, sorry. Let me do that in slow motion. I always forget about the lag. So technically what I'm doing there is something that's called a compress expand, which means basically my puppet's bending their knees, and then a tuck and a curl. And that's where, oops, it falls off my hand because I'm totally a professional. It's where your puppet's head is the last thing up. Okay. You know, that yoga move. So you do both of those. And then you also do a look down as the puppet is coming down, because the difference between landing, jumping, and falling is what you're thinking about. I'm thinking about where I'm going versus I'm thinking about where I came from because I was pushed. Then we have meaningful movement. And this is where we get super important for people who are existing virtually. With meaningful movement, the idea is that every time your puppet moves, it should mean something. There's a thing in puppetry that we call head bobbing. And head bobbing is where your puppet talks like this, where they move their head with every single sound. There's nothing wrong with moving your head, but if that's the only movement that you do, it ceases to have any meaning. It just becomes mud. So what you want to do is you want to pick motions that will either add emphasis or remove ambiguity. So the training phrase that we do, which I'll do badly first, is, I came from over there. I'm going over there. Nice talking to you. Goodbye. Okay. Where are you coming from? I don't know. I came from over there. I'm going over there. Nice talking to you. Adding emphasis. Goodbye. And yes, we do sing to ourselves. Okay. So the other piece of that is, so that's removing ambiguity and adding emphasis. Then there's also 3 basic motions and 2 basic silhouettes. Technically 3, but roll with me. So the motions are, you've got aggressive, passive, and regressive. So an aggressive motion is anything that you want to engage with, anything you're curious about, happiness, certain types of anger, anything that you want to engage with further. In those, you lean forward, you take a step towards, you turn towards. Those are all aggressive. Passive is exactly what it sounds like. You don't have strong feelings one way or another. And regressive are things you don't want to engage with. Fear, revulsion, again, certain types of anger. It's going to be a pull back, a step back, and a turn away. Any of those things. So again, I'll give you a training phrase. We can try this all together. So I'm just going to show you what happens, and I'll try to do a neutral read with my voice. What did you say? And I'm going to change what I'm doing by the motion of the puppet. What did you say? What did you say? What did you say? You see how those read like 2 different things or 3 different things? So the silhouettes, which couple with those, are opened and closed. An open silhouette is, again, anything you want to engage with. And a closed silhouette, again, things you don't want to engage with. So arms out, curled in. Those are things that are head up versus down. So basically expansive versus protective is a way to think about it. But it varies a little bit. But again, anything you don't want to engage with, you tend to close. Anything you do want to engage with, you tend to open. So I'm going to show you a simple breathing pattern, neutral, and then I'll do an open and closed, and you can see the emotional difference in it. So one looks like laughing, one looks like crying. So when you're talking to people on the interwebs, things that you can think about are, how close to the monitor are you getting at any given moment? Like if you want to let people know that you're super interested in something, you can actually lean into the monitor. If you want people to know that you are interested or excited about what you're saying, again, leaning towards the monitor. It's like creating your own close-up. Things that you're less excited about, you may want to pull back from. You also can think about where your eye line is. Like right now, I'm looking at the camera very consciously instead of looking at my own image. And you can see the difference between this. Right now, I'm looking at my own image versus looking at you. One of those feels more connected. So these are small things you can think about. You can also think about when you want to gesture. Like right now I'm doing a lot of gesturing below the screen, which doesn't make any difference. But when I'm wanting to add emphasis to something, I'll bring my hand up. Like there are 4 principles of puppetry, and make sure that you can see that. So there are all kinds of things that you can do there. You can also, when you're sharing a screen with other people, being conscious of the fact that, you know, in this case, if I want to make sure that Kishore has focus for everyone, when he's talking, I'm going to remain much more still. I'm going to pull back from the camera a little bit to allow him to have more prominence. Whereas when it's my turn, I actually do lean up a little bit and I get more animated in my movement in order to make sure that you are drawn to me. So there's the 4 principles of puppetry and how they relate to video communication.
Also, how to make a puppet to keep yourself company in quarantine.
Yes.
That's
a super
Yes.
important skill. Yes.
Yeah, that's super neat.
That was cool.
Can I just go, holy shit, that was
Yeah.
Not what you were expecting.
I am
when
not-
said puppets.
I'm not thinking about like how I am on these video chats consciously in the way that you're talking about it. Oh my goodness. Oh no.
Now you
I'm
are.
like, now I'm having the anxiety of how I've been on these video chats.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep being annoyed with myself because I set my chair a little bit too low and I keep straightening. I'm like, oh, darn it. Everyone just like, you just popped in the screen right there.
Yeah. I've been thinking about how, because since I just built this whole studio, I've been thinking about this, and you know, like film would say you should put your face on in the like rule of thirds, like here or here, and not here, and not be too small, but not be too big. You know, there's like so many different things with video chat that you have to think about.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the other things with puppeteers. I always have the camera so that it is not a mirror, because with puppetry, when we're doing video puppetry, we are responsible for helping compose the frame. And when you have the mirror, you know, it's certainly there's a lower learning curve, but it means that your visual storytelling is backwards. For people who read left to right, the storytelling also takes place left to right. So when you've got progress from left to right across the screen, when you've got movement from left to right across the screen, it means progress towards success. And when you've got it from right to left, it tends to mean a reverse. So yeah, if I weren't using a ring light that you can totally see, like being over on this side of the screen carries a different feeling than being over on this side of the screen. And you know, knowing that, like, I can again manipulate it a little bit.
Man, that's cool.
Oh my
So
god.
cool.
Nice.
Oh,
Okay, well,
Laser
luckily
communication.
luckily it's the weekend, so I get to rethink all of my digital communication come
Yeah.
Monday.
Bobak, it's all you, man. You're gonna round us out for the rest
Yeah,
of the
Bobak.
Oh wait,
Take
I
us
can
home.
tell a super short version of this story, but it's appropriate to the Apollo, and we're coming on an anniversary anyway. So yeah, one of my favorite weird and just I think was kind of a positive tradition at JPL, like a lot of people know about, or if you watch our videos, and you'll be able to get that chance in July when we launch a rover to Mars, is the tradition of Lucky Peanuts at JPL, and why we do
Lucky
them. And
squid peanuts.
they are not normally squid peanuts, to be fair. That's maybe my take. If we ever do a mission with the Japanese Space Agency, it'll have to be squid peanuts, I guess. So it starts with a Ranger program, which is sort of a precursor to the Apollo program. And it's one of the earlier robotic spacecraft missions that JPL was doing. Started in the late 1950s, but launched, the first one was in 1961, Ranger 1. And the idea was to send these spacecraft, and I have, again, thanks to Amy, I have this RCA glass here that you can see a Ranger on, to launch these satellites at the moon. And in order to understand sort of the up close kind of imagery of the moon, right? So you're trying to land people on the moon eventually. You also need to understand what the composition is. Is it going to be jagged rocks? Is there going to be, you know, flat places to land something the size of a spacecraft? And the idea was send these satellites to just kind of take camera images up to the surface of the moon. Now, the first few Rangers have a bunch of instruments on board. They're actually much more ambitious in terms of the amount of instrumentation, but they have a number of failures. The first 2 Ranger missions don't make it because the launch vehicle fails, because you're talking about the 1960s when launch vehicles were super unreliable. Ranger 3 makes it, has a little bit of an issue still, which is that it misses the moon altogether. We got there a little too early. Rangers 4.
An issue, it misses the moon altogether.
Well, yeah, I
This
mean,
one
listen,
at least
minor.
left.
Minor
I will
issue.
say that it's tough. Like if you think of navigation, navigation is both being at a place and a time. It's like very different than me going to like San Francisco or whatever, right? Where like I just need to get to the place. Like I also need to be there in time when it comes to space stuff, and that makes it a little bit harder. So number 3 has has a rocket issue still, in that it basically gets to the moon too soon. The first 2 don't make it really off the Earth. Like they make it off the Earth, but like they're still in the atmosphere essentially, so they died. Ranger 5 has a camera issue as it launches, which is that it turns on accidentally in the middle of the launch and then turns off. And then everything is actually going pretty smoothly for Ranger 5, but they're worried about the camera issue. So they turn on the camera a few minutes before they're supposed to impact the moon, and it doesn't turn on. It doesn't send any images back. So that was a problem. And it turns out they think there's a bunch of shorts in the system. They went back to RCA, who's the provider of this class, as well as the cameras. And I understand there's a lot of camera issues in there. They had a number of issues they could not do on like tests on Earth. And this is like a theme that you might see also as you start talking about like Starliner and other issues, is like, how do you test certain things? It's very tough in the space program. They could not simulate zero G, of course. We still can't. Or not practically at least. And so what was happening is these gold-plated diodes were flaking off gold, and the gold was settling elsewhere and causing shorts in the system. And so they were able to diagnose this later by saying at least the gold was flaking, and then they had to hypothesize, of course, the zero G environment and what that would happen in that thing. By block 6, you're on the final sort of iteration of the design, but remember, basically block 3, the first 5 Rangers are all failures. So they've already cut the funding for the program from 13 Ranger missions down to 9 Ranger missions. Not surprisingly, I would probably do the same thing if I were Congress. They've kind of salvaged a little bit of it by turning the Ranger like block 1 series into the Mariner 1 and 2 series of Venus. Mariner 1 fails, but Mariner 2 is kind of successful. Ranger 6, which is the final design, it works pretty well in that it gets to it's designed to target the Sea of Tranquility, which is what they think they're going to go for the Apollo missions on. It does very well in that it hits the Sea of Tranquility, at least. That's great. It doesn't do so well in that the camera still doesn't work. So they didn't get the images that they wanted to on that mission. And then in Ranger 7, same design as Ranger 6, we launch it. It can't go to Sea of Tranquility. This is actually something that Mary Robinette and I have talked about, because the lighting conditions in July when they launched that one aren't ideal for the incoming camera angle, so they can't actually target Sea of Tranquility. They have to go to a different location. But finally, Ranger 7 is successful in basically taking images, and these are cameras that can basically do a frame every 10 seconds, right? They're a scan line kind of camera, similar to the way your cameras work today, but obviously our cameras are much faster. And they're able to get finally pictures of the surface of the moon at about 38 centimeters. So you can resolve small features the size of a box kind of thing on the moon. And that is sort of the first success of the Ranger program. And what's noticed on the camera is that folks are eating peanuts in the control room. And that is the first time we're successful. Someone's trying to call me. The first time we're successful in the Ranger missions. Rangers 8 and 9 are both successful, but that is the start of the Lucky Peanuts tradition at JPL. So now whenever you watch our big activities like launches, landings, my mom and dad commented that I was eating a lot during the Mars rover landing in 2012, and I was just doing my part to make sure that the mission was successful as far as I can tell. But a lot of peanuts are there. And so you'll see that in every mission control room. So look for that in July of this year when we launch the rover. And again, in February of next year, when we land the rover, hopefully, successfully, but definitely people will be eating peanuts in our mission control.
If I'm not mistaken, the cardboard cutout of you at JPL has a jar of peanuts next to it.
It does have, I'm holding a jar of peanuts like very, you know, like this and the thing, offering them to our guests.
I have a couple selfies with that cardboard cutout.
I've eaten peanuts next to it.
I usually
Yeah.
text it to Bobak every time.
I think that's my favorite thing about going to JPL is taking a picture with the cardboard cutout of Bobak.
They really should just put it in the lobby at this point.
I feel like people are
yeah.
more
At
excited
security.
to see the picture of the cardboard cutout than me, actually, to be honest with you. Like, I've seen people who are like, hey, I didn't have any time to see you, but I got a picture of your cutout. I was like, thanks, I think.
There's more than one cutout, isn't there?
There's a few.
Like last
One of them is now in my office area.
Four?
A coworker somehow successfully finagled one of the cutouts away from mission control area, and they were doing very entertaining things. They took it on tour of JPL at one point. They had lunch with it a few times. It's shown up in meetings. It's pretty entertaining.
Amazing.
What
I'm
All
gonna
right.
use it for my.
done.
I should bring it home actually for the Zoom and the WebEx. I'll just put it in front of the camera so it looks like I'm standing there just visually listening to whatever.
You have to just
People are
like lean
saying.
it to either side of the camera depending on your mood.
That's right. Yeah, now I know how to use the right
I
and
know
left side of the
some
camera.
puppetry.
All right. Well, we've reached basically the end of our stream, and I have our scores.
Oh.
So
Oh
Oh
no!
no!
Mary Robinette completely won. She had
Nice.
0
Wow.
face touches.
I'm glad you were not counting hair touches as touching my face.
I'm sure I lost.
No, Trace, you came in tied for second with Amy with 2. Bobak had 3, and I had 5. So
Wow.
I will.
Right.
I'm
There,
in
still work to
deep
go.
trouble. I'm in terrible danger.
Well, we're at the very
can-
end. Everyone, please plug something that they want people to go and find. Kishore, go wash your hands while they do that. Mary, go ahead. Mary Robinette, go first.
Oh, darn it. So since I was talking about puppetry, go to Puppeteers of America. So it's puppeteers.org. You'll be able to find places where there are local guilds, and normally I would be telling you to look for performances, but this is actually a really good time to donate to Puppeteers of America because most puppeteers get their bread and butter from going and performing in schools and in theaters, and they will be completely out of work. So giving a donation to Puppeteers of America so that they can help puppeteers would be a really kind thing for you to do.
That's nice. Amy, go ahead.
I'm gonna grab a prop for this one.
Get yo book.
I know we talked about the book, and I realized that I'm gonna do one quick bit of show and tell as part of my my plug here. So one of the I told you I'm like collecting all the things of Jackie. One of them is copies of her book that are signed.
Ooh.
I have 6 signed copies of her memoir at this point. This one's actually super cool because it's signed by Randy Lovelace, who did the medical testing for the Mercury astronauts. Floyd Odlum, Jackie's husband. There's Jackie right there. And then we have a few other people there, but the other one in here, hang on, we're gonna do this real quick. Where is it? Of course, this person had to sign on another page, and Chuck Yeager also signed it.
Ooh.
Wow.
So if you want to know more about Jackie and all of the amazingness that is women flying in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and then trying to keep pace with America taking its first steps in space and kind of why that didn't happen. Fighting for Space is available now wherever books are sold, online as well as physical. And of course, it is available in an ebook version as well as an audiobook that I narrated this time. So,
And you can also find Amy at all of the eBay auctions for Jackie Cochran
Yes.
paraphernalia and ephemera.
Anything that you see that is being sold from the Jacqueline Cochran Cosmetics line or any books that she ever touched, I will be bidding against you hard.
Great. Bobak, what are you?
I will plug JPL's education team has been putting together a lot of resources for kind of families stuck at home. So if you Google JPL and STEM activities for families, you'll find some fun stuff for you to do. And then they're organizing a bunch more. It's kind of organized by grade level for folks to do that with. So I would just highly recommend just checking that out and hopefully finding some fun activities to keep people entertained in these tough times.
I want to plug, there's especially if you're a maker with 3D printing capacity, there's a whole group of makers that are working on developing PPE equipment for hospital workers, like face shields and stuff. And there's sign up forms floating around the web. So if you have that kind of capacity, I want to plug for that, because I think we need that kind of support. And we need to be able to contribute to this time, and I think it's important. How about you, Trace?
Well, you're currently on my channel, so if you've never been here before, please click subscribe, like this video so that more people can see it. Go follow all of these awesome science nerds, and just actually, I was just going to say nerds in general, because you can be a nerd outside of science and still be awesome. So you can follow them all on Twitter. That would make my fiance really happy because she works at Twitter.
Do it! Best cameo ever.
That's all I got.
I hope you enjoyed this. We're gonna try to keep doing it because I need a reason to have a little sunshine in my life. So keep an eye out on Trace's YouTube channel, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. This video will still be alive after